I'm going to just tell you a little bit about us. I know everyone knows us for our wonderful content, and we are grateful for your engagement and all of our great content. But guess what? We are a software company. So if you're not familiar, we are a customer success management solution, and we help our customers say, they manage from new to renew through our platform. Miranda has actually been a wonderful multi-time customer of ours, and we've had the privilege of working together for quite some time now. So you can pester her with all your questions if you want to know more about client success. But it is a wonderful solution, easy to use, simple and powerful. So if you are on the market for a new customer success platform, or you don't have one in place today and you're interested, we're going into 2024, you want to optimize, you need to scale, please check out Client Success. We'll be happy to take a call, do a demo. In fact, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation with you to share all the wonderful ways that I'm using it here at Client Success as well. Now, why you're here, right? Enough about me, enough about Client Success. Want to get started and have my dear friend Miranda take over to introduce her awesome topic for today. So Miranda, thank you so much for joining us in a holiday week, in a short holiday week. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, and excited to be here. I am definitely going to hop in and talk about a very challenging topic, but something that's important. I know many people are going through tough times in tech right now, so this topic is very timely and relevant. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay,
Awesome. So
Christy, can
Miranda,
you
I'm
give
going to
us-
go away while
Okay.
you get started, and I'll be in the chat. So if anyone's got questions, I'll be there. And then please, friendly reminder again, just drop any questions you have into the Q&A. We'll get to them at the end.
Yeah, thank you, Christy. And just a reminder to everyone, please, please, please definitely ask questions. If you have any thoughts or comments as well, put them in chat. It's much more fun for me as somebody who's presenting to be able to engage with folks. So please don't be shy. So I'm going to hop right into it. Christy already did a little bit of an intro about me, but I'll share just a little bit of more tidbits about myself. So I've been doing this type of work now for 24 years. I'm currently a senior vice president of customer success and ops over at Datasembly. It's a data platform that provides analytics and insights to CPGs and retailers. I've been here for 3 months. And I also act as a fractional COO for another company. On top of that, I've owned HR, biz ops, finance, sales, marketing, pretty much everything in an org except for product and engineering. That's an area that I haven't been brave enough to venture into. Engineering because of skill, product because I also think it's a challenging area. So I have a lot of respect for all the product folks out there. This is my 9th startup that I'm on right now. I've been fortunate. I've had 4 successful exits and I've had a few failed startups. So had a lot of learnings along the way. And also I've won various awards for CS and leadership over the last few years. And I will say I'm kind of excited about this, published in 4 books. If you are a book nerd like I am, these are definitely great books about customer success that you should check out. I think Christy's in some of these books as well. So you'll find lots of great tidbits in here. But I always share my family when I do these things. I'm more than just a tech exec. I'm more than just my resume. I'm also a wife, a mom, a firm mom, and much, much more. Here you will see my 2 little rescue Shih Tzus, Ruby and Muggsy, my son Lucas, who is 22, and also my wonderful husband, and you'll get a little snapshot of my nephew, Caden, there. All right. So everybody already shared, or some of you shared, and thank you, Christy, I see that. Some of you already shared where you are located, but I would like just to know a little bit more about you. So if you could also comment with maybe your title and any functions you own, that would be very helpful to me. And if you're in between roles, that's okay as well. Maybe the last function you owned or the function that you're trying to own next. That would be really helpful so I can see who I am talking to. Again, this is helpful for me to cater. So yes, that would be great. Thank you. Give it a second. Any brave folks out there that want to share first? Just the functions you own in your organization. Normally, if we were live, I would have you hold your hands up and tell me if you are a people manager. Okay, so we have head of CS, owning implementation, CS, and customer data. Perfect. Thank you, Kate. Is it Kaisha? Sorry, I'm going to butcher names. Anyone else that wants to share, that would be helpful. While I'm watching those come through, we are going to go ahead and hop into the next part. Thank you, Melinda. So I also want to ask if you're brave enough to please share in the comments if you were impacted by a layoff this year. Or even if you know somebody that was impacted by a layoff, please share in the comments. Thank you, Melinda. It's been a tough year for many of us, especially those of us in tech. I don't know if you all follow layoffs.fyi, but layoffs.fyi is showing that in the year of 2023, we've had around 250,000 layoffs this year. And that's just those that website has been able to capture. I'm sure it's much, much more. And that's like 100K more than what we had in 2022. So that's pretty significant. And who knows if, by the end of the year, we'll see it peak up even more. I feel like it's starting to slow. I feel like the tides are starting to change, but it has been a difficult year. And even if you are in a company that's doing great, I hope that what I'm about to share with you is useful or helpful. While I never wish what I experienced upon anyone, the experience I have had has definitely changed how I approach my new role and probably how I approach all of my future roles. The first 8 months of 2023, I probably lived through the most difficult period of my professional life, but fully acknowledge that it was a lot more difficult for the folks that were impacted by the layoffs. It's never easy to have to do the difficult things that you have to do to preserve a company. And I was really tossed into that, let's just say head first. I jumped in right in there. So what happened? I joined a company that was operating heavily under the growth at all costs model, VC backed, and they had received a round last year. It was grow baby grow. And then January happened, and I joined at the end of January. And the dependency on funding that many of us experienced if we were part of VC-backed and even PE-backed organizations, the money kind of dried up. And what ensued is what I called perfect storm, which I'll go into greater detail in the next few slides. What the end result of the perfect storm was me leading the company through 2 rounds of layoffs, one in April and the other in July. And then shortly thereafter, switching myself from a full-time CCO, COO role there to a fractional COO. Let's first just kind of dive into what happened. And I'm sharing with you all what happened as leaders of organizations. So you can take a look at this and reverse engineer your organizations to ensure these things don't happen or never happen, or at least to help you see a little bit around corners. So, as I said, the company had a growth at all costs kind of model. They were just coming off from their biggest quarter ever in the company history. While there was a crazy amount of factors that led to us having to go from a company of around 75 people to 30, I'm going to share a few that alone, if they were just the only issues, they would create obstacles in operating. But when they all came together, it's what I call a perfect storm. So first and foremost, I already talked about the financial distress, funding slowing down. There was also a mismanagement of spending. And then after coming off our biggest quarter, we then had our slowest quarter ever. On top of that, we didn't make ourselves a mission critical tool. So then we started realizing the heaviest churn that the company had ever seen in its history. The customers viewed us as a nice to have and not a mission critical tool. Next, the company had also grown so much in 2022 that the operational frameworks did not keep up. They did not evolve and keep up with that growth. So this is a really big call out to all of us. Even if we're only growing 20% year over year or 50% year over year, or if we're one of those companies growing 100% year over year, it's really, really important that you keep up with your operational frameworks and make sure that the processes are unifying and it's not creating silos or fractures. A few things that happened here was We overhired for future growth that never came about. We had the wrong people in the wrong seats for the wrong phrase. We overtooled. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll hear me say this a lot. You do not always need the biggest, sexiest tool. As a matter of fact, some of those really big tools require a lot of upkeep. We had a massive case of overtooling for our phase. We missed renewals and customer billings. The processes, again, did not keep up, and the renewals and billing process needed to be completely, rethought out. And then also on top of that, as if that's not enough, the KPIs and goals just did not unify the company. So we had a lot of fractured teams and silos operating. And I'm also a big believer that product is the tip of the spear. Without a strong product or service, all other efforts are futile. And we had very slow product innovation in 2022, and that led to the competition catching up. So this is really big. Partner closely with your product partners, with your engineering team, because product is that tip of the spear. And while the startup I'm talking about has not failed, it's the little engine that could, I want to give a quick snapshot of why in general startups fail. This is data from 2022. It'll probably look a little bit different when we look at it next year about why startups are failing in 2023, but we checked 6 of these boxes. As I said, it was the perfect storm. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what I learned. I'm going to cover some of the basics and the actions from the business side and then hop into the human side. When I created this presentation, I redid it 4 times in trying to think of what I wanted to share when I shared this at the CS100 conference in Utah. As I said, I led the company through 2 rounds of layoffs, and there was a massive change from my approach on the first round to the second round. So the business side, let's get back to the basics. This is a jam-packed slide that covers many things, but this truly encompasses getting back to the basics for the business side. Funding is tough right now and will probably continue to be like that for a while longer. Leaders, you need to know the important metrics that drive your business. So I want to call that out. Get back to the basics, understand those metrics, understand those key drivers. It's crucial not only to understand the key drivers internally, but also what metrics are attractive to your investors and how you impact that. CS, get close to your customers, get close to your sales counterparts, and vice versa. If you're in sales, get close to your CS counterparts. Just, like I said here, BFF close. You need to understand what's going on in each other's worlds. That's incredibly crucial, especially in times of economic downturn. And like you, customers and prospects are changing how they think about budget. Value is king. It's no longer just an extra thing you do. You have to drive value, or you are putting your business at risk. Think about it. Think about how you operate within your organization. Right now, I'm sure they're scrutinizing, your CFO or the folks in financing are scrutinizing every line item, trying to figure out what can they cut. That is the same. That's the same thing that's going on at our customers. And we don't want to be the product or service that they cut. And it's likely your competition is experiencing the same challenges you are. So how you show up, how you innovate, all of this matters more now than ever before. Switching to the business side. So the next few points, the business side, the actions. The next few points may not be as relevant for you if you're not leading a layoff. So as I've stated, I worked with the lawyers. I sat in 30 back-to-back Zoom calls, dealt with the aftermath, helped with a go-forward plan. And these are a few things I learned that I'm going to share with you all here. So before you even get to the point of doing a reduction of force, make sure the step is absolutely necessary. That goes without saying. If you're like most organizations, though, the majority of your spend will be in your talent. but you would be surprised by how much money you can cut from your burn by conducting a full audit of your financials and cutting back on unnecessary spend. Examples of this can be having duplicate technologies. I know that sounds crazy, but it happens a lot in early stage startups when you have, siloed teams, or services that are not driving value, or paying for seats that are not being used. All of this stuff happens a lot. You'd be surprised right now by the companies out there that are willing to work with you just to keep your business. So a downsell is almost always better than a complete churn. The next thing I want to call out is to make sure you're doing scenario planning. Understanding what needs to be true with your top line revenue growth, your retention, your expansion, your monthly burn, to have a full view of what you need to achieve with these cuts, but what you can't do when you do make these cuts. One of my biggest regrets that I have after I did the first round was I didn't go deep enough. And when we missed our sales and retention targets, I had to go back and do it again, which completely eroded the confidence of the remaining team. I'm not proposing that you go super deep, but just know your scenarios. This was my first time ever doing something like this. The second time I went in fully knowing that I needed to scenario plan, because we were again needing to do more cuts. It's also crucial that you assess your risks. So identifying which areas to cut from, it's just the hardest thing that you'll ever have to do. But there's a lot of benchmarking available. So you can look at your spend versus companies of similar size to help guide you on where you should be looking. But just know that if you cut your team size, again, I want to call this out, you will have to cut back on the initiatives that they're driving as an organization. That's another mistake I've seen other companies make, is they cut the team size and then just expect the remaining team members to just pick up and function as they did prior to the cut. And I can't reiterate enough having a solid communication plan and strategy. Think through how and when you'll communicate out to your various stakeholders. Make sure you provide training for everyone in management on how to handle their side of communications. Lastly, I will add to hold space for emotions. We're going to go into a little bit more on the human side here, but there are going to be a lot of emotions as folks staying behind will be mourning the loss of their coworkers, friends, the normal that they knew. Many will have survivor's guilt. Hold space for it all. And the last thing I'll call out in this section is just get back to basics. If you have gone through or planning on going through a reduction in force, you have to figure out a way to bring the team together quick. Be balanced, right? Don't overcorrect and create so much process that you can't move the needle. Stay close to your customers, stay close to your prospects, and get close to your team. Okay. But no matter how you slice and dice this, if you find yourself in a situation like this, you're going to be impacting real human lives. It's terrible for everyone involved. Put on your empathy hat. Put yourself in the shoes of the folks being impacted. And do the right thing. I know you may not be in a position to have control over this, but work with your leadership team to make sure they are doing the right thing. Make sure that you are providing as much of a buffer as you can to help the departing team members land. Lead with compassion, care, and empathy. Things that you can do, even if you're not a decision maker, and how the packages will be put together, are opening up your networks, leaving LinkedIn recommendations, making introductions to folks in your network, reaching out to your investors and see if there are any companies hiring within their portfolio companies. do whatever you can do to help these individuals. And for those that are remaining, you have to employ the tactic of extreme transparency. Many folks will immediately start looking after a reduction in force happens. It's just going to happen. Know this. Be very transparent about runway, revenue growth, churn, and whatever else that can help retain your top talent. Remember, you are human too. Okay, so do take a moment and take a deep breath and allow yourself to mourn what happened. And use the learnings that I have shared with here to help everyone get better. Because at the end of the day, we, the leaders, are responsible. No matter, the reasons I've shared here that cause that perfect storm, when you're sitting on Zoom across the table, laying someone off, they don't care about any of that. They immediately go into, what am I going to do next mode? So approach these situations knowing that while the reasons matter in fixing and adjusting and making sure history doesn't repeat itself, in that moment, none of that matters. And Christy, I went through that relatively quickly, but
That's okay. Listen, the content is so heavy, and so I'm more interested in hearing from the folks that have joined us today, because obviously this topic has resonated with them for some particular reason, so much so that they were compelled to join the discussion. So we don't have any questions in the chat just yet, but I guess I'm going to open this up to the folks that are still on the call with us today to see, how are you guys approaching this, right? How are you navigating it? How are you reacting and responding to it? Obviously these scenarios impact everyone so differently. And as a leader myself, who's been a part of layoffs, who has had to lay off people, it's to your point, Miranda, right? It's a very emotional process that you have to navigate through. And especially now as we go into the holiday season, it's even that much more painful for folks, on both sides of it, right? There is the survivor's guilt, as you described, but then also, I mean, for those who are providing for their families, not knowing what the future holds, especially during this time of year, is really painful. So want to just open it up to the group and see if folks have questions or thoughts about this topic or anything we can bring to Miranda to kind of discuss on, since she's obviously had to navigate so much of that this year, unfortunately.
And it's okay if no one has questions. I get it. It's a very personal and deep topic. I'm also open to folks reaching out to me on LinkedIn if they just want to chat privately as well. But yeah, I'm hoping folks can learn from some of the mistakes I made, and adjusted on my second time around.
Yeah, I think you gave everyone great insight. I mean, Miranda, there's things that you included there on kind of like your audit, right? Of what things you should look at before you go the route of, obviously laying folks off. What are things you can do internally to either cut costs or to just bring that down? I thought that list was really insightful, because I don't know that a lot of people think to automatically go that route. There's always room to cut spend before people. So I think when we can, we need to. Sometimes I feel like organizations commoditize people, sadly, and there's not enough thought that goes into it.
Yeah, and I think that's some advice I would offer to folks that do have a budget. Really spend carefully. I hate to say that because I'm in tech, right? And I want people to spend money on my tools, but just really think about your spend, and be cautious with your spend, because every department, it adds up. It all adds up. And that increases the burn that your organization has, which increases, the likelihood that you might have to reduce your spend at some point in the future, depending on what happens with future funding.
Yeah. Miranda, we actually do have a question. Mike just dropped something into the chat for us. So Mike, thank you so much for that. So he said, where the firm had estimated a certain employee size, how'd you go through the process of getting that number to the right people to keep?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike. It was incredibly difficult. So what we did is we took a look at the money we had in the bank, and figured out how long would it likely be until we would be able to secure another round of funding, given the unit economics that we were standing up. And when I'm saying unit economics, it's like, what is our rule of 40? What's our gross, our net, our overall growth? And we mapped it all out and knew that we needed at least 8 months to a year to be able to get the business get the business to a state where we could put it in front of a VC or a PE firm and have great term sheets, right? Without having to take a down round or anything like that. So we started there, and then we took a look at how much money we had in the bank, how long would this money last us, and had to figure out where to cut there to make that money last us at least through then. It was less around how many people we needed and more around how many people we could afford. And I know that's possibly not the answer you wanted to hear, but that's the reality of what's happening. We wanted all the people. We did not want to cut anyone. And we knew that it was actually going to set us back quite a bit when we had to do those cuts, because we weren't going to be able to ship as much product, sell as much product. Like, we knew that we were going to have to take these risks and cut off certain things. We have another question.
Yep. So Dave asked, while the personal side was very difficult, how did you ensure your customers' level of service didn't take a hit?
That's a really good question too, Dave. We actually kept we had a very small tech support team. So we kept the individuals in tech support. That was prioritized. So that was how we did it.
Miranda, I'm going to take this a different direction, still applicable though. So obviously, for a lot of folks, maybe they didn't go through layoffs, but maybe their hiring was frozen, right? They're not able to bring more resources on. Now, either way, right? Either you're laying people off or you can't grow your team. You now have to prioritize with business impact in mind. So as you navigated these things, let's give the audience a little bit of some insight into how you determined what did you say yes to, right? Because obviously at that point you're saying no to a lot. So from your position, what were the things, or how did you assess this is a yes?
Yeah. So one, I always had in mind what our big goal was for the year, where we needed to end with revenue, how much of that revenue was going to need to come from new business, how much of the revenue needed to come from renewals. And then I backed into it quarter by quarter, understanding what are the levers we have available to us in each quarter, and what is the minimum that we needed to do in each quarter to be able to drive those levers. And it's a lot of brainstorming. It's a lot of, trial and error, but that is basically how we planned out what we were going to do and what we weren't going to do. We had 4 company top priority objectives. And if it didn't fall within in those 4 buckets, they were not going to be done. Like, we just couldn't do it. We couldn't take it on. No pet projects, no one going rogue and doing fun stuff on the side. Like, these are the 4 things that we need to be laser focused on. If it doesn't fall into one of these buckets, it can't be done. And I see a lot of companies doing that very thing right now, because they're not able to hire. So you have to figure out, where do we need to be in the next couple of quarters? How are we going to get there? And what's the minimum and then max, and then figure out somewhere in between of where you want to land and say no to everything else.
Okay, now I'm going to kind of stay this route because I think this is interesting for a second, because it's still going to be applicable for folks. But now we're going into a new year, right? And so for companies that did have to do layoffs this year, and they're still frozen on hiring, how are you distributing this work, right? I hear so many CSMs who are like the recipients of 2x, 3x the work that they were managing before, with unrealistic expectations in the business. Let's give a little advice to the frontline teams, right? If you're an individual contributor and you're in an organization where all of the work has been redistributed, and instead of your leader saying, okay, we're going to do different work, or we're going to say no to things, the expectation is that we are still going to sustain the same level of output with fewer people. What should they do, Miranda?
First, it's not possible, right? You're being put in an impossible position. And if your leader doesn't see that, shame on them. I'm just going to say that. Shame on them. That it is just not possible for folks to sustain the same exact level with less resources available without killing themselves. So what I would say if I was a CSM and I was put in that position, one, I would get creative and think outside of the box on how you can drive a different experience but still get the same outcomes, right? Take a look at your customer base. Is there a different way you should segment? Is there tools that you have internally already that you're not fully leveraging? Partner with your marketing folks and think through drip campaigns, think through community, think about how you can educate and communicate to masses, which then take all that burden from you as a CSM, right? If you don't have a community or webinars, office hours, a one-to-many play, that burden is on you, right? You have to make sure your customers are being educated and they're getting the information. So that is where I would start. That is usually the lowest hanging fruit. Once you peel that off, that can free up time for you to be able to be that strategic thought partner to the customers that need that strategic thought partnership, right? It takes the onus of you sitting and doing these one-to-many trainings off your plate. So I don't know. What would you suggest, Christy?
I mean, a lot of the same. And honestly, that's what we're doing here at Client Success. So, obviously we're not a huge organization. I'm not hundreds and hundreds of people. So we don't have huge downsizing, but we have limited team, limited resources, and we've had to rethink how we use those resources. And I'm never going to be the leader that says we got to do more with less, because I'm not a math girl, but that doesn't math for me. So I need to do something different with what I have. And so we've actually been in the process of rethinking all of the resources across my organization, not just by the functions, right? By looking at each individual person and looking at their strengths and things that they enjoy doing and how can they bring value to our customers. So not even pigeonholing them into support or services or success. Like, let's think creatively. And as part of this redesign, we've actually started to think that breaking out into specialty roles is the route that we're going to go, with a heavy emphasis on community and scaled programs. So not necessarily go one-to-many. I'm not going tech touch. I'm not going digital. Our market and our platform really, it doesn't work in that environment, right? Our customers need guidance. They need thought leadership. They need some support there. So we can't abandon them. We're not Calendly, so it's not super, super easy, but we're going to rethink all of our resources, but really doubling down to your point on those scaled programs. So I will say the biggest investment we will make in 2024 is content. And so that is through all channels, all mechanisms, right? Long form, short form video, new knowledge base, what we're putting into the community, newsletters, in-app guides, tons of video content, new webinars, things like that. So just really rethinking content and its distribution to make sure that we're reaching all of our audiences to help enable and up-level them the best as possible with the small team that we have.
I love that. I think that's going to be really impactful. And as a customer, I'm happy you're not abandoning me.
I'm not abandoning you. The feedback, it was so interesting. So I did interview our customers, and I will say, if you're an organization who's going through these changes, right, and you have to rethink what you're doing, one of the exercises I did is I reached out to couple dozen of our customers and I interviewed them. And I said, like, tell me, what do you need to be successful from my organization? And they were very clear, right? In fact, what I learned is that I could probably scale back on the recurring cadence of engagement, but introducing these programs and new content, they were like, yes, that's what we want. That's what we need. So it was interesting to actually hear them validate the direction we were going, but not only that, get excited about it. So I think you'd be surprised what you think your customers need might not actually be what they need. So let's not make assumptions. And I think if you go out and speak with your customers and engage with them on this, you might find out that you can do things a little bit differently and it won't be disruptive. It might actually be a positive experience.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Absolutely.
All right. I know that we've got 20 minutes left. I'm not going to stretch this longer than we need to, but I am going to go back to the audience and see if anyone has any other questions for Maranda. Obviously, she's got a ton of experience outside of this topic alone, so you might as well take advantage of it while we have her. So if there's something even not related to this topic that you want to squeeze in as a question, otherwise, we're totally fine to end a little bit earlier and send you all into a happy holiday. So we'll give you a minute or two, see if anything pops up here in the chat. Please feel free to connect with Maranda. So if you're not connected with her on LinkedIn, one, I don't know how that's possible, but two, there is her link. So you can go ahead and do that, add her there, ask these questions. I do recognize some of this is personal and private.
Yeah.
And so she is definitely a great resource to have a private conversation with as well.
And I know a lot of people, and I'm just going to say, I know a lot of people are in the market. I get pinged. The topic that I get the most pings about is, how do I get a job? Where do I go? What do I do?
Yeah.
And this all really does play together because look, it is a very saturated hiring market right now. So if you are one of those folks that are on this call and you're out there trying to secure your next opportunity, one, hang in there. I'm starting to see things peak up. I'm starting to see more banners go up and people celebrating new roles. 2024 budgets are opening up as we speak. I know I'm one of those folks that I'm planning out my 2024 budget. So there will be more opportunities. We also see little inklings that the economy is turning around. There's some deflation happening, which is good. So I just want to first offer, like, hang in there. Second, right now, because the market is so saturated, because of things like I just talked about, leading layoffs, were great people who were performing very well at no fault of their own have been displaced. It is a lot about who you know. Even if you know have a fabulous resume and you know a lot about your industry, getting that foot in the door with somebody that you know is so helpful. So one, if you are a person that is in a position to help people, you know, you are in an organization that's hiring, be open to those types of connections. And if you are a person that is out there looking, reach out to the people you know, reach out to your network, and they can, you know, ask people for help. I know it's hard. I'm terrible about that as well. Christy will tell you that. I am probably one of the worst people to say, help me when I need help. But this is the time. This is the time we should all be supporting each other. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an awesome place to end this conversation, Miranda. I think, listen, for those who are still looking, I will just echo what Miranda's sentiment was. We are seeing things pick up. It'll be a slow, steady lift into the new year, but just sit tight. I will say dial in your resources, your resume, all of the things that you've got. Make sure your LinkedIn profile is built out. Advise those that you know to do the same, right? This isn't just a message for you, but anybody that you know that you see. One of the things that I love, again, as a pay it forward, if I see someone who's reaching out to me about a job, maybe I'm not hiring or maybe it's not a fit, I will offer some advice too. If I come across a resume that doesn't feel as strong as maybe it should be, or a LinkedIn profile that feels like it's lacking, listen, offer some feedback, offer some advice. If you know what good looks like, tell them, help them. Like, let's not allow people to just be out there floundering and struggling. So just help lift up everyone in this community. The better they do, the better we do as a community. So I just think it behooves us all to just support one another. So Miranda, thank you so much for taking the time for joining us today. Again, in a holiday week, I really appreciate it. To everyone who took the time today to be live with us, we are so grateful for you. We know that, one, it's a super busy end of month that we're gearing into, and now we go into the end of year, and that's even tougher and more busy. So just really grateful for that. We'll continue this conversation through this series next Tuesday. So you are part of this series. You were here today. You are registered. Please come back next Tuesday, same time, same place, and we'll continue the conversation with our next speaker from CS100. Want to just wish you all a happy holiday if you're celebrating. Even if you're not, we all have something to be thankful for. So just take some time to reflect and be grateful. So I'll leave us with that. And thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your week.
thank you.
Bye.